we say welcome to Derek Johnson, to Cornelian Filtered out of Sweden. Very welcome, Derek.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and we have been watching you because we are really interested in, law and order and protocol and also the military for a couple of reasons. First of all, your military have been very active in Sweden for a couple of years now. And we have been looking at our protocols, and we discovered a few things that we will talk about. But tell us a little bit more about yourself, Derek.
Well, I'm just your average everyday American over here. I always grew up loving history. I always grew up studying history. I had grandfathers who knew our history, loved our history, always talked about how, even they were forewarning what was coming in a different way, because so many people over here, for lack of better words, in a different way, but also are just spoiled. I mean, I get more emails from all over the country: Sweden, Finland, Indonesia, China, Vietnam, all over the world. I get more emails from people who know more about our history and foundation and constitution than Americans do. And when you're born here, it's like you're spoiled in a different way. Like, I look out the window, it's beautiful. I don't have to worry about anything here. I don't have to worry about a roadside bomb here. I don't have to worry about any kind of things like that. And, people here kind of get, lazy in a good way, but also lazy in a bad way, because they want to be argumentative with people like me when I'm just sitting here showing people the simplicities of government and simplicities of law and order. They want to get all, like, oh, this ain't happening. It is happening. It's exactly happening. And it's not going to hurt them, as Donald Trump says all the time. He said in a speech not long ago, even the haters and trolls don't realize what we're doing is going to make their lives better. We have too much stuff over here where people argue over the dumbest things. If you've ever watched any of our reality TV, as they call it, you would know that Americans argue over the dumbest and most simplest stuff in the world. That is what it wasn't even meant to be argued over. It's gotten, that's where it's gotten what I call bad over here. It's not, we don't have a bad life here. We welcome anybody. Here's what America was supposed to be set up for. We welcome anybody who wants to be a part of what America is. Has nothing to do with what color you are, what race you are, what religion you are, anything like that. Is do you want to buy into our system here, right? Do you want to be a part of our system? Do you want to be a part of the foundation that established it for that reasons? And so many people forget that. That's what becoming an American is buying into our foundation, our history, and understanding where we came from, how we were established. And Americans have forgotten that. And so it wasn't like that, I didn't build a platform. My video went viral. People resonated with what I said. So it wasn't like I built a platform. It's just that so many Americans feel this way, and they didn't know how to say it. But they also didn't realize there is a fine blueprint. There's a chronological order of laws and orders put into place that forms what I call a blueprint. And, everybody, it ain't just Americans, but everybody is watching the most biblical, monumental, historical world operation take place. And it's through law and order.
Yeah, I think it's the same in Sweden. Donald Trump, he said that we are a small country, but very, very sharp. So he speaks about us. Also, he in 2015 he called us out. He said it was a company called Ericsson, and they sell telecom infrastructure to regimes that use that in order to surveil and monitor their own people.
Here is another example of pay for play. In 2009, a company called Ericsson came under U.S. pressure for selling telecom equipment to several oppressive governments, including Sudan, Syria, and Iran. Some of these regimes use those technologies to monitor and control their own people. In June 2011, Hillary Clinton's State Department began adding goods and services to a list that might be covered under expanded sanctions on Iran and other state sponsors of terrorism. During that time, Ericsson sponsored a speech by Bill Clinton, paying him $750,000, his highest paying speech. In April 2012, the Obama administration issued an executive order imposing sanctions on telecom sales to Iran and Syria, but those sanctions did not cover Ericsson's work in Iran. A Trump administration will end the government corruption. No one will be above the law. We will have one set of rules for everyone. In Hillary Clinton's world, we have one set of rules for her and another set of rules for everyone else. I'm fighting for everyone who doesn't have a voice. I will be your voice. Believe me.
And if you read that Ericsson report that I sent you, this is put together by a man called Michael Ray Corey, and it's Ericsson.com, EricssonReport.com, sorry. And so this is a family called Wallenberg, and last week they were actually on Wikipedia over the most wealthiest family in the world. But then after 1 week they scrubbed it. So, but we kept all the prints. So they have been working in the shadows with a motto called esse non vedere. It's called to act without being seen. And Trump talks about them a lot. And also Q, there is a Q post that talks about this entity. So have you heard about them?
I've heard the name, yeah. You know, because I follow, I call him Boss Man, but, you know, the Q, I don't talk a lot about Q on my post because it's hard enough to get Americans just to read simple law and order.
Yeah.
It's amazing, once again, how in depth this goes. I was just talking to someone last night. It's amazing how in depth this really goes in every country, all over the world. But especially, I remember, you know, the talks with Sweden about NATO.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know, NATO has been eating our lunch for over 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just recently. I did a report on them, and I included Sweden and Finland back in one of my MBA papers I did in 2017, 2019, somewhere in there. And I talked about NATO, you know, and I talked about Finland and Sweden, and I talked all the NATO countries and different things of that nature. But we had floated 98% of the budget for 35 years.
Yeah, I know.
And Trump had been talked about NATO for 40 years.
Yeah, he said that they are ripping us off.
Yeah,
he was complaining. Yeah,
but what people don't still understand though is that NATO itself might not be a bad thing. It's just what became of it, what people were inside of it. It's not systems and government that make government and systems bad. It's people, right? It's what people do. It's people's actions. Government don't run itself. Systems don't run themselves. It's people who run them.
Yeah, exactly.
So, it's like people right now don't understand. Like the NATO aircraft, there's a NATO aircraft that I follow all over Sweden and Finland, and it flies everywhere. It was flying like night before last, and it's a NATO aircraft. It's a Century aircraft, but the call sign's always NATO. People say, "Oh, well, if NATO's in the sky, then how is this an operation for us?" And I'm like, because you don't have a clue what's going on. It isn't NATO itself that was bad; it was the people who were in it that were bad. So yeah, I'm familiar with a little bit of it because you have to know what's going on, not just in the U.S., but you have to know what's going on in the world to understand that this is not. I'm trying to get Americans that are awake to understand. Hey, this isn't just an American operation. This is not just a U.S. operation. This is a world operation.
Yeah, to take down the deep state. Yeah, so it's a poor. I can maybe read it. It's post 4024. Sometimes you can't tell the public the truth. You must show them. A deeply entrenched enemy who controls the vast majority of all communications is only defeated by game theory Q. And this was from April 30th, 2020. And this is really interesting because this entity, they control the telecom infrastructure in 184 countries. And that they also control the internet. They have the keys to the internet. So when Pompeo went around and he wanted all the countries to sign this agreement with a clean internet, I think 150 countries signed, but Sweden didn't. So we are. They called us a national security risk. And actually, in 2019, the Justice Department took control of Ericsson for 3 years, and they prolonged that to mid-2024. And also now you have hundreds of soldiers, and they are suing Ericsson. I think it's about 800 soldiers because they cost their lives. And actually, they won. So this entity is now under the control, and our theory is that Sweden is under siege by the American military, and the reason is in 2017, the Justice Department again they charged Telia with bribery in 7 countries. And during that time, our state, it was state-owned to 40%. So Telia was state-owned to 40%. And they were actually charged with bribery. So they helped the dictator in, what's it's called? Yeah, it's a country. They helped the dictator there to steal 7 billion.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up about the communications too, because of this. So many people over here, if they would simply read the Federal Continuity Directive 1 and 2, and then those two have what I call spring-offs. So there was one in February 2018, one July 2021, and January 2021. In those Federal Continuity Directives, what I'm trying to get people to understand is this, and your audience may already be tracking, but Federal Continuity Directive 1 was signed and it was passed 3 days before Trump took office. All right. That's on the GPO, That's the government publishing office.
Mm.
So it shows our government passed and signed this. Now, it is on the front. When you go pull that up on the screen, it says Department of Homeland Security, all right, U.S. And then it also says FEMA, right? So the GPO, 3 days before Trump took office. The second one was signed, and it's under FEMA.gov, but it's part 2. It's the implementation phase of it. It was signed June 13th, 2017. So for people out there, I've even had people, with I would say a lot better legitimate questions than some of them I get or comments. But when I try to read the comments to see what people are doing, but what they're doing is they're not reading it. They know it's there, but they're not reading it, because if they go read that thing, oh my, it's got all your communications in there. It talks about emergency groups. It talks about devolution and reconstitution. But the key point there is the communications, emergency communications. It is all over that Federal Continuity Directive 1 and 2 about the communications. And then when you go read the other 3, one of them's called the Continuity Guidance Circular. It talks about quarantine, pandemic. It talks about emergency. So what people have to understand is what is a continuity of government? It is a presidential guidance of how the government can sustain through. So it says before, during, or after a catastrophic emergency. So I tell people how. Okay, so I've posed 3 different questions in a different way, but I'm like, how did they know? Who's they? I say the military and Trump, but let's just say for sake of argument, Congress, how did they know to issue these continuity directives January 2017 and June? Was there an emergency before there? Oh, that would be the Obama administration. It wouldn't have been Trump. During, no, it couldn't have been during, because 2017, there was nothing happening in 2017 that was a catastrophic emergency. Or after. Wow. So they are telling you that they planned 2020? Now, people are going to think I'm crazy in a different way, but I've made this point before, whether people like it or not. But quarantine, it's all throughout these continuity directives. Quarantine and the pandemic, it's all in these directives long before 2020. What I think they did, personally, is my opinion, this is what I think that the military did. I think that they used 2020 as an example to get people. We're going to see how many people will stay at home and listen to us. Because in order to decimate 85% of street crime in the United States, which is what Donald Trump is predicting, he's been saying this. He's not predicting, he's proclamating it. We're going to decimate street crime by 85. 85% means martial law. That means National Guard in every city. That's where the cities are. Donald Trump said just recently at CPAC and Waco, we're going to tear down some bad and ugly buildings. Well, he's talking about Antifa, BLM. He's talking about safe houses, drug houses, things of that. That's martial law. So if people would go read those content, talking about the Erickson report, the communications, this is not just a U.S. thing. It's going to happen all over. Look at El Salvador. El Salvador is showing Americans what they're planning on doing. They arrested 40,000 MS-13 gang members and herded them down the street like cattle with machine guns around them. So the world's showing the U.S. what's going to happen, because why? So Americans are soft, and they're a bunch of pansies over here. Majority of Americans are soft. In your country and everywhere else around the world, not just you, but I mean, all over the world, hey, you commit a crime, they're going to show it to people. They're going to show people, like El Salvador. And it's sad in another way that we, the Americans, have to watch the rest of the world show Americans what's coming for America, when it used to be America showing the rest of the world. But in one way, once again, I think it's cool that it's happened this way, because it's going to save bloodshed here, because we would have people getting out in the streets over here. We'd have the good old boys from my part of the country out with their guns, and they wouldn't even know who we're fighting, because Donald Trump told them in March 2020, it's an invisible regime we're fighting. You don't know who they are. Only the military knows who they are. But, you know, there's some that we know. Obviously, we know who George Soros is. We know who certain people are. But we don't know all of them, because even the people like you're talking about, they got people who work under them. Who are those?
Like Soros. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Who are those rats? You don't know those rats. No one knows who they are, but the military knows who they are. And that's why we're fighting an invisible regime. But it's awesome you brought that up, because so many people need to understand the communications, telecommunications. When you read those continuity directives, emergency communications, that's 42 United States Code. When you go read all the codes, and you read the Telecommunications Act of 1996, it all outlines this for Americans. And all they had to do is read those two directives and just rabbit trail just a little bit on the offsprings of the, like I say, the one that was passed in February 2018, the other one that was January 2021, and July 2021. If they just read those 5 documents, they would know what's going on, because it's the continuity government that's showing the military operation. It's not the military operation showing everything else. It's actually backwards. But people don't read over here, Cornelia. They don't read over here. They don't read. They don't want to read. They want me and you to read it for them. And I'm like, that's about 600 pages or whatever it is. You can't just, you and I, it would take us all day to pull up a screen and read it to people. And that's where we are.
And also we have a castle. It's a red castle. And on that castle we have the Swedish flag. Okay, and since the 1600s, that flag have been raised every day to show that Sweden is a sovereign nation. Well, we had a 4-star general from the US here, Christopher Cavoli, and he was selling Patriot. And during that time when he was here, the flag didn't go up. Speaking about protocols. So we have many different things that we have been looking at. I've done like 8 programs about this, that we are under siege. And also 3 of them is called Law of War, where we are looking at the Law of War manual. And you are also speaking about that. And can you please tell us when they redid that, they took like the Geneva Convention, could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, so yeah, you know, the Law of War manual is, it's the Department of Defense's manual. So who's they? And it tells people in the preface, is what's amazing is, you know, if you read the preface of that, there goes those Americans again, and don't know how do you know that? Well, it's in the preface. It's just in the first few pages. It shows military and federal lawyers got together. They took the Law of War manuals from Germany, Australia, Canada, and the UK. And then they also took the Lieber Code of 1863, the Geneva Conventions, the Hague Conventions, and the Nuremberg trials. They took the strengths out of all of those, combined them, and made the new Law of War manual for the Department of Defense here. It was issued June 12, 2015, 4 days before Donald Trump rode down that escalator and announced his candidacy for president. I mean, since we're talking about Q, Q said, how many coincidences do you need before it's mathematically impossible? Right? And that's one little example, but the Law War Manual. And then another thing to show, there's two things to show firm fact that bad boy is being used. And what I tell people is when you go read it, it's not an easy read because it don't read like a book. It reads for situations or scenarios. For example, Donald Trump, he said it once in August and he said it again November the 15th, 2022. He says, remember Angela? Do you remember Angela Merkel? Nobody's remembering her right now. Even his audience wasn't even, they just were kind of like, oh, they're sitting around. They all had their champagne glasses going, So he goes, remember, no one's remembering her right now. He goes, I gave her the white flag of surrender. Well, that was kind of all he left it as.
Yeah.
Well, if you go look up the white flag of surrender separately, we'll hold that over here. But when you go look up, when did Donald Trump give the white flag of surrender to Angela Merkel? Well, articles pop up everywhere. And it says July 2021 was those were the main feature article. July 2021 is when Angela Merkel took the deal with the Nord Stream 2. And then Trump's been talking about that a lot lately. The Nord Stream 2, the Nord Stream 2. No one would know about it if it weren't for me. He said that over and over and over. Well, when you go to Law War Manual, chapter 12.4, there it is. The white flag of truce. And the layman's term for it is basically, if you don't take this deal, we're going to obliterate you. We will destroy you. Is basically what that says in the Law War Manual in layman's terms. So there's one example. The other example is chapter 18. There's been over 100 and I think I'm up to 116 count. And I've got to go back and look again if there's been any more recent. But there's been over 116, anywhere from captains, officers in the military, captains, all the way to generals that have been relieved of their duty. That's chapter 18 of the Law War Manual. They're cleaning out all these what Dwight D. Eisenhower talked about, military-industrial complex of people in the military, especially on the officer side in positions of leadership. Every article read, lost confidence in their leadership. Now, some of them either replaced, maybe put on probation, in the military, or rather, just suspended. But a lot of them were probably forced to retire. They're not going to show that because that's what the military does. It's like, okay, we will expose you. We're going to put this out, but they won't show the rest. Whoever it is would have to keep up with it wherever they are and see if there was any kind of court martial that went down and if they went to court. But most of the time, just smearing their name here is bad enough for them, because here's people who have served anywhere from 18 to 30 years who are all of a sudden, loss of confidence. So that's a bad enough smear on their records, because most of them have decoration. A list of resume that, So the Law War Manual basically is like that guidance. It strengthens the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which is military law. So it kind of accompanies it. It's the Uniform Code of Military Justice where most of those leaders are actually reading. And then the Law War Manual what I call coats it, because it's not an easy read, and it reads real bland if you read it alone. So you have to understand all the other stuff and how it just kind of coats around the uniform, the UCMJ.
Yeah, but also it's much easier to read the Q post when you know it's reference to the Law War Manual. So many were speculating about these dates and so on, but when you found the references, like 11.3, and you found that in the law of war manual, then we knew that, okay, now we understand.
I mean, the military occupancy, that reminded me when you said 11.3 on November the 3rd, which was also the election date on 2020. But this past November, Fox News put out an article on November the 3rd, and that article read word for word just about the law of war manual. When you went and looked it up, it was a direct mirror. And Q talks about, you talk about the mirrors, but that 11.3 and 11.4 mirrors a lot of different things that they've been using. So there's so many references on the 11.3 and 11.4, but that is the military occupancy, and it's very powerful.
And we have been talking about Biden, and we had actually General Milley here. He was on this warship, USS Kearsarge, and that was really strange because he was meeting. We believe that we have a war delegation instead of, our election was rigged, so we think that if we are under siege, it was not valid. So we believe we have this war delegation that are ruling Sweden right now, and actually they met General Milley on this ship, and that's really strange because if it was an official, country meeting another country, that should have been Biden, right? But if you have, like you say, continuity of the government, and you have this transition to military power, that makes sense. What do you think about that?
Well, there's another thing that it's makes this thing so brilliant was the fact that the continuity government is the umbrella, right? And in that, when you go read those FCD 1 and FCD 2, it talks about all three branches of government, which are executive buildings. So that's the White House, all right? The judicial branch, which is your Supreme Court, and then you have your legislative branch, which is Capitol building, right? So it's got all these things and everything. They even have picture graphics of those buildings and what goes under that in these continuity directives, right? And the reason why I bring that up again is it's so prevalent to what's going on. That shows the outline that Congress, the courts are under a control. This time, who is that control? Well, in March 2020, Donald Trump became a wartime president, even though it was already a military operation to begin with. They had to show people visually, they had to show people based on law and order, things that have already been taking place in our history. Roosevelt was given the power by Congress in 1941. He was given power. Congress gave Roosevelt, the president, power to restructure the executive branch to declare war by the president. That's 50 U.S. Code, Chapter 33, Section 1541. All right. When you go read that, it shows the national emergencies. It says when a president cannot enforce a law, he can issue a national emergency and he can declare war that way. That's why Donald Trump, when he says if they're going to investigate me, they got to investigate every president before me, he's basically saying, I didn't write that. I didn't pass that law. I didn't make this a law. I didn't amend the Constitution. They did. Right. So that's also what has to do with his quote unquote indictment. All this stuff ties in because, once again, it all ties. So when you look at March 2020 was the definitive turning point in this because he became a wartime president. He had already issued 10 national emergencies up to March 2020. 10, right? And then FEMA also declared emergencies alongside with him. They even have a site you can go look at, and it shows which ones have not been addressed yet. It's all out in front of everybody. And the reason why this is important is because Donald Trump federalized 1 million National Guard to active duty. There was an aircraft this morning that flew out of Ohio all the way to Great Britain. No, as a matter of fact, I take that back. It flew, I'm looking at it right now. It flew to Romania. So there, National Guard, that's not how our National Guard work in the U.S. All right. So to your point, Donald Trump did something that no other president's done. All right. So this is perfect. You're asking all that. This is beautiful. This is a great show. So Donald Trump signed Executive Order 13919, where he gave the Secretary of Defense equal authority to federalize troops.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you give him equal authority to federalize troops, people who don't know what that means don't understand. Oh, well, he just has no. He made him equal to him. He made him basically equal to the president's seat in a different way. So it's now Milley is what Donald Trump calls a TV general. He's just a TV general. So the actual Secretary of Defense would be Christopher Miller. All right, that would be that's the one that he gave the power to. So everything that people are watching, like Milley, and you got Lloyd Austin, and you have Biden. They're all actors, right? Yeah. So they and the people know that. People always say, "Oh, people know this." Do they know? Yes, they know this. If you go read that continuity of government, it's Congress and the courts and the executive branch, president, vice. Yes, they know what's going on. It's all a big movie, and so they put in every piece of the puzzle. And those actual people, it depends on who they are. So, like Christopher Miller's a good guy. Donald Trump had just put him in. Why would he put Christopher Miller in that position late in the game? Is a fight about to take place. No one paid attention to any of that when Christopher Miller was named Secretary of Defense. So Milley and Lloyd Austin, all that stuff. But it's always look at the baby formula. I like to do it in layman's terms. No one remembers. Here we go. Here's it. No one remembers the baby formula shortage now in the U.S. No one remembers that because Americans are drama filled. They live day to day off of drama, but no one remembers that anymore. Who approved that mission? Secretary of Defense. It wasn't Biden. It was the Secretary of Defense. Everything you read in articles, who approved of it? Secretary of Defense. So to your point, Milley being there and not the president, I mean, it's right in front of everybody. I tell people all the time, if he was the president, look, it wouldn't matter how much I didn't like him. Even if I loathed him, if I hated, and hate's a strong word. I don't hate anybody. I just wouldn't like him. But even if I hated the guy, he would have the same powers as every other president. If he was president, he'd have the same powers. He'd have the same luxuries to fly around in Air Force One. Why don't he? People say he does. I'm like, no, he doesn't. They only show you one little clip when he's coming off the aircraft. It's all a plan. It's all a movie. So I know I'm going around the 40,000 foot view for you there, but I think people need to understand that all the like TV general.
Yeah, he's a TV general, but I can also, sometimes when he does that, it could be a sleeper, it could be an act. We will see, but I mean, to really give him so much crap all the time is, sometimes he does that, and it's all a show,
Well, they know what's going on, so that's the key thing is that they know that they're playing this position that's going to take a lot of crap, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, and also I got a question.
It's like playing a bad guy in a movie, right? It's like playing.
It's not fun.
The guy, David, what's his name? Bruce Dern in America.
Yeah.
Everybody loves him. He's loved now, but for years he played in the movie that shot and killed John Wayne.
Yeah.
And for years he said kids would run up to him and just, "Oh, you killed John." They really thought he killed John Wayne.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. Yeah.
So imagine playing that role, the bad guy in the movie,
Yeah.
right? So as a prime example of that, they know the role they're playing is, they knew that they stepped in that position. So I
Yeah.
want to make people aware that they know what's going on.
Yeah. Also, I got a question that if we talk a little bit about when Biden was sworn in, he wasn't, but I got a question if all presidents before the resident, Biden, if they were sworn in like, properly.
Well,
So if you look,
no.
No,
Yeah,
do
no.
you have? Great.
Yeah, Obama had sworn in at the wrong time too, and they had to swear back. I believe it's Obama had to swear in at another time later, but not on TV. So there's been a case of that. So the 20th Amendment of the Constitution specifically says, matter of fact, we'll pull it up where we get the exact words here. That way people can hear it, because others have said, "Oh, well, I don't see how that makes sense." And I'm like, well, it absolutely does, because it reads, excuse me, it says, "The terms of the president and vice president shall end at noon on the 20th day of January, and the terms of senators, representatives at noon on the 3rd day of January. Of the years in which such terms would have ended it if this article had not been ratified." And then it goes, "and the terms of their successors shall then begin." Now, this is where Americans I pick on, because we have slang now, like Southern slang and this slang, and everybody has like this dialect in America, right? And they've forgotten what words mean. Then shall then begin is that little word in there is so critical. It shall then begin. It says that the terms shall end at noon of the 20th. That's 12 o'clock. Everybody knows what noon is. That's 12 o'clock. This said shall then begin. So that means anywhere from 12:01, you'd want to make it official. And most presidents in history made it 12:01 or 12:05, just where it's official, right? Where no one can say anything. Biden raised his right hand at 11:47 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, so 13 minutes before noon.
11:47. Yeah.
And he never signed in. He never swore in anywhere else. Like, "Oh, we made a mistake," because he's not real. That's
He's
why
a resident.
I get upset. I get more upset with people. I did this post yesterday on Twitter. I said, blue check, red check, this check, that check. It don't matter what you are. If you talk about Biden in present tense or future tense, you have no clue what's going on right now. I don't even give the guy credit, because he's not there. He's not real. So all these people,
he's not even a good actor.
They'll say that, "Oh, I'm awake," and I'm like, "No, you're not awake." If you talk about Biden in present tense you're not awake. The guy had a military funeral service. It wasn't an inauguration.
Yeah. So
that's an Army thing. First off, it's not just Army. I'm not knocking all the branches, but look, every branch we have a tradition. But the ultimate thing for the military is that the ultimate sacrifice is to die in that uniform. The uniform is sacred. All right, it's the service that's sacred. So the Army has 4 and 8 years for this service. 4 and 8 every 4 and 8 years for the inauguration. It's something that's prideful in a cool way. Oh, I'm in the official presidential salute battery. I'm going to get to perform for the president. Yeah. 4 and 8 years, and they got that wrong all of a sudden after all these years? No. And that's something that's supposed to be taken seriously. So when people over here, what happens in the U.S., when you're a veteran and people find out that didn't serve, here's what they do. Oh, thank you for your service. But what's happened is when I tell people what's going on after they thank you for, well, I don't think I agree with that, or oh, that's not happening. You just thank me for my service. That's 10 United. When I raised my right hand to swear into the military, I swore in under 10 United States code. This same code, this same Title 10 that Donald Trump federalized the National Guard and active duty. So you can't have one without the other. Like, you can't believe in this Title 10 in my service, but say, well, this Title 10 and Donald Trump federalizing troops is bullcrap. That's it. I mean, I get lost for words for that. I'm like, it's the same Title 10. So it's the same thing with the military. Joseph Biden received a full grade military service. Every presidential inauguration has 4 cannons. You can get on YouTube and look all the way back to JFK. 4 cannons. Funeral services. Yeah. It's also the Army. 3 cannons. 3 cannons for Army. The Army does all the presidential funeral services. That lowers them in the ground, and then 3 cannons. Joseph Biden had 3 cannons for his quote unquote inauguration. No, they didn't slip up. There was not a slip up. No, it wasn't. You know?
No. And also, I mean, this entity, Wallenberg, they also control BIS, Bank of International Settlements. And we're going to talk a little bit about the economy and the new quantum financial system. I know that you have been studying the quantum homepage a lot. And I think this is really important, because the problem is when you have an entity that controls the telecom infrastructure, that have quantum computing, that control NASDAQ with all the trades in 150 stock markets, stock exchange, also the electricity stock exchange. When you have that leverage, you can see exactly where the assets are, right? So what they did also, they have this for Europe, this like organization for all the insurance companies. So during Second World War, they knew exactly where all the assets were, right? And also now, let's say you control the telecom infrastructure, the platform for 150 stock exchange, then you know exactly who's trading and who has intel, you know, and you can just give them a call and say, you know, tell them that we see that you have been trading a couple of times, that, you know, we think that you have some information. And then you have, then you have something on them, right, that you can use. And this is also linked, of course, to Epstein and all the CIA and all the intelligence community. So
what I tell people, the thing that people need to understand is this: once again, government doesn't run itself. Systems don't run themselves. No. People do. And what Americans don't want to think about is this, or they don't think about. Maybe that's not that they want to. It's just they don't. A lot of them don't think outside the box. Is like right now. See, Roosevelt told Congress. He didn't ask Congress. Roosevelt told Congress, it's my duty as commander-in-chief. And who do you think the military will listen to? You think they're going to listen to you, or are they going to listen to the commander-in-chief? Which one is it? Right? Well, no one over here thinks about all of our bases. All of our bases, right? Who's going to listen to who? The love that the military had for Donald Trump, and they still have, who's going to listen to who? Same thing with this quantum. We all know. Anybody who has a brain, anybody who's awake, knows the U.S., we left the Gold Standard Act in 1968. All right. And Congress, right, and this Federal Reserve, et cetera, they made the dollar as valuable as they wanted it to or invaluable and nothing to back it with.
No.
And, well, let's just print money. We'll just print more money. We can't account for it. We'll just print more, right? Well, Americans don't realize how controlled we became because of this little paper system.
Yeah.
Right? You can't live without it now. Anywhere. No. You cannot feasibly live without it, right? You don't, I mean, I would say probably 95% of America don't live off the land anymore. And my grandfathers one of them was a farmer his whole life. They lived off the land. They didn't need anything. They didn't have to go to the grocery. They lived off the land. That was my lifetime. But now we don't. We live off of big box stores, et cetera, controlled by this little dollar right here. Yeah. So who has control of that ultimately? Well, there's enough people up here, thank God, that have our best interests, and they're all God-inspired, God-led, came together, no matter what their backgrounds are, came together and go, hey, if this keeps going, it's going to be catastrophic, not just for the U.S., for the world, right? If this keeps going, because we have so many allies that everybody owes everybody something. Everybody wants to get mad. You can't have that. Like it, and what it's true. The Bible talks about love more than it talks about anything else. It talks about love. And at the end of the day, most people don't want to fight. Most people don't want to take up guns and fight in the street. Most people are willing to go, okay, let's talk this out. All right, we don't want that. So let's talk. That's all we got here. In quantum.gov, it's cool when you pull it up, it's got the countdown. 4 days until World Quantum Day. That's kind of cool. So quantum, no one wants to think about, what was that going to look like? Well, we know we have technology. I don't think it's going away. I don't think that all these people are going to wipe out our towers and we're going to go back to old school like phone lines. We're not doing that.
Bring the gold and, trade.
So what do? You where did our gold go? See, Americans don't realize when we went off the gold standard act, these hierarchy, these regime, right? They took our gold, they took our silver, they took it away, right? And they hid it. All right. That's not some kind of when people hear that here, they think of something like from the 1700s, right? Or something where it's like, or a Indiana Jones movie or Nicolas Cage or whatever it is, like a national treasure, the thing, that wouldn't happen today. Yes, it did. We for fact left the gold standard act, and the gold, where did it go? Where did the silver go? Where did it go? Right? Yeah. So quantum system. Yes, Donald Trump, he issued an he signed an executive order 13885, and it was the Quantum Advisory Committee. Then it became the Quantum Initiative Act. All right. And so then you have quantum.gov, which launched September 2021. September is a big month that we use over here because of the Constitution was signed in September. A lot of things happen in September. So quantum.gov, and it's real in depth. It's real deep. And most people don't want to read them. I mean, it's got right now on the homepage. I mean, there's a lot of articles you can click on and read about R&D and all kinds of things. But Japan's already launched it. I was watching TV not long ago. Commercial came on. Japan's talking about I think their prime minister or whomever, I can't remember who it was exactly now on the commercial. But he's talking about quantum physics and the future is quantum. And then I know that AJ Roberts over in Great Britain, go on the show all the time with him. He was talking about, the EAS going out a week after this right now. So all this timing for everything, us talking about communications, us talking about the emergency communications, and then the quantum, 4 days away, World Quantum Day. What's that mean? And there's so many people don't realize what's happening. Germany and Texas, the state of Texas has filed for their participation in this, which is very critical. So what's it going to look like? You know, I have thousands of emails coming in about, is my 401k, is it okay? Is this okay? And I'm like, look, ladies and gentlemen, they did not take this on without having a plan in place for your systems. But yeah, if you'd be reading back here, you would understand what's going on right now. The banks, no, you don't need to run down to your bank and panic about anything. The people in charge, had all this in mind. You know, I'm not a quantum physics expert. I get it. I understand what they're doing. I do keep up with it based off of the Post and what's going on with executive orders, and also you know what Trump he said multiple times. Hey, Americans' golden age is up ahead. He's tweeted out, "Have fun lobstering." Well, that's an app. He's given so many optics and comms out there that we're going back to a gold standard, and it's going to be some form of blockchain technology. But, you know, what's it exactly going to look like? I don't have a clue, but I know the good guys are in control of it.
Yeah, the problem if everybody runs to the bank, the problem is that there is no money, because the money is debt, right? So
right.
let's say I want to buy your house. We can make an agreement that, okay, I pay you every month for 20 years or 30 years. But then maybe, you know, I don't trust you, and I don't want to have all the liability. So the banks are just in between. So they guarantee me that I get the house and that you get the money. So they take the risk, right? So our money is actually debt. And the problem with that is that the interest is not created at the same time. So what you have now is debt saturation. And that is the point where all the new money that is created, like more than 50% of them go back to pay all the debt. So that, so we have a liquidity crisis now. And the reasons why we have that is because all this, during the pandemic now, everything was, you know, in lockdown. But the debt, it kept growing with interest, right? So in order to have liquidity, you have to create more loans. And when you have a whole world, so actually I believe that the good guys, the White House, they forced this status quo that we didn't, I mean, they did a lot during the lockdown, I believe so. But also what they did, they forced like a collapse. But they won't just collapse it, because they have to have something to replace it with. But if we all get panic and run down, I mean, it doesn't matter if you save your money, if the whole system is going collapsed, right? So exactly. That's just, because if you have like $1 million and it goes down to almost zero, it's you have $1 million that is worthless. So we can't we can't do that. I mean, we have to be reasonable that this is a transition, and we have to and since this is global, this is a global ecosystem. This is not the US dollar, the Swedish krona. This is a global ecosystem. And we have to be able to trade. I mean, we need things from different parts. So we actually have to replace this, and we have to, the only thing that could solve this is actually debt forgiveness. And why is that? I mean, you have in the Bible, you have the year of Jubilee, that you come to a certain point and you have to forgive all the debt. Otherwise, the system, it will be too heavy with this debt saturation. And the Bible, they knew this, they knew that we have to have this system. But now we haven't had debt forgiveness for many, many years. So,
that's right.
Yeah. And in order to transition from this system, in Sweden, 99% of the money is digital, right? And that is the private banks that have given out loans. In Sweden, we can't have the central bank money. We can't hold them as the public. The people can't hold those money. That is just for the banks. So what you have to do, you have to have the central banks giving out a digital crown, because otherwise you can't convert them. So what you can do is because you don't want to lose your money, right? So you can convert the digital money that you have in your bank account to this central bank money. And at the same time, you have debt forgiveness. Then it's like a new start. But it doesn't have to go cashless. It has nothing to do with that. It's not cashless. It's just that if you're going to take all this money and you don't want to have zero in your bank account, you have to convert it into something that's under the people. And you know what Trump did when in March 2020, he took control over the Fed. So the Fed is now on the Treasury, under the people. But all the money is issued by the private banks. How will you solve that? You have to solve that by having a digital dollar. It's not cashless. It just go from one system to another system under the Treasury.
Well, so and it's no different. It's no different than a debit card. I mean, it's the same. People. This is not. It's the theory there, right? This is not cash. We just hope it's there. So it's the same thing.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, it's trust. We trust that this is worth something. And for us, we believe that, okay, I have $100 in 10 years, it will be worth almost the same. So that is just trust. We don't know that. We can never know that, right?
Right, exactly.
So, yeah, so if the currency, if everything goes down, the system goes down, what do you have? You have kept your dollar. Yeah.
Which is the same thing as the dollar. They made it as valuable as they wanted it. Who's they? Well, Fed, Reserve, etc., government.
Yeah, that's a private entity. Yeah, it was.
Or they made it as invaluable as they wanted it. So sometimes a dollar ain't worth a dollar, like we're talking about. It's a dollar. You're holding a dollar bill. Oh, I got a dollar. No, you got about 47 cents, right?
Exactly.
It's as valuable, and people don't realize that. So it's like where we are with inflation right now, right? I mean, the cost of a vehicle, there's a vehicle over here, a Wagoneer, a Jeep Wagoneer, $105,000. You can buy a house in America. Well, it ain't big, but you can buy a small, maybe built in the 70s house for $75,000. So who made that vehicle worth $105,000? Who? People, right? This dollar that ain't worth a dollar, right?
No.
But also talking about that, you talking about Donald Trump in March 2020.
Yeah,
this happened right from it. That happened.
Yeah.
Then you had the U.S. Treasury Secretary, October the 18th, 2021, say, "Hey, United States is bankrupt." How come people didn't see that? And then, they saw this. They saw Biden raise the debt ceiling, right? Well, the debt ceiling, you raise the debt ceiling, so we go more in debt. That makes a lot of sense, don't it? On a normal basis, right? How can people not see? But the other thing was, what I try to tell people is to show people how good this is. China and Brazil struck a deal just last week, to ditch the U.S. dollar, right? Who did Donald Trump have at CPAC with him? The former president of Brazil, right? So they're showing people this is a world operation. In Brazil, I have aircraft. I know I'm the aircraft guy too, but I have multiple aircraft from Brazil off the coast of Florida, right, operating near the Space Force base. So it shows people, if they can ever get out of this matrix, and see this is a world operation. Like you said with your elections over there. Brazil had the same problem with their elections, right? They had the same problem. The rhinos. It's not our votes individually. It's the rhino regimes that are stealing these elections. It's not, Joe Blow down the street down here, did something. It's the regime doing it. So I don't know. I think it all ties in. Everything you talk about, it all ties into the laws, the orders, and the acts, and everything ties in. That's the quantum part of it. Quantum is so external and so big, right? That even the average mind, almost even our minds, can't even hardly comprehend it because there's so much stuff going on everywhere, and I don't know. It's brilliant. It's God, and it's brilliant.
Yeah. Another problem that also is really different because China, they lowered their interest, and actually, if we talk about the pandemic and everything was in lockdown, and then at the same time you higher the interest, then you know that they are forcing the collapse again. And how do we know that? Of course, the private banks, they want to make money. Of course, they want to make money. So before, like in 5 years, why didn't they increase the interest? Why? Because they couldn't. Because then their clients would have liquidity problems. They wouldn't be able to pay. So who are forcing them now to increase the interest? I mean, you see, they are forcing the collapse, and we are watching it. So, and what we are speculating, and it's really fun to do that is what they will replace it with. We trust the plan. We trust that they will replace it, because not one country can do that, because you have to, and that's why Donald Trump, he was so busy going to all of this country and struck all these deals. And what you see now forming with the BRICS, I mean, I believe that is what Trump has planned with them. So the US, I mean, all countries, I've heard that over 200 countries have signed this quantum financial system. Of course, they have no choice, because it's impossible, this system that the private banks and the Federal Reserve and all of them, I mean, the first central bank in the world was Swedish. Actually, Sweden, was forming. We were in the US as well, New Sweden in Delaware. So we were there before your country was formed. So we have been everywhere. We have been very busy, So I think this is the interesting part. And I actually heard you were on Charlie Ward, and he said that, I believe he said that 178 banks have collapsed in the past weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what it was all about. Once again, like you said, the Trump tour, as they call it, the World Trump Tour. That's what it was all about. And basically, there's that white flag of truce again in a different way. If you don't become a part of this, the world's going to know who you are, right? At the end of all this. And it'd be best if you step on board with this, because other people are doing it. So, yeah, I don't keep up with all the numbers on that. It's so hard to keep up with what I keep up with. But, yeah, I do keep up with it from the different point, and that's why I try to get him to talk about that, because I have so many people asking about the quantum system and asking about, the banks and what's going on. And now, like the Federal Reserve building, it had a fence go around it late 2022. There's that closing of a government facility right there. That's in 47 U.S. Code 606, which is titled War Powers of the President, of our president. And the fence goes around the Federal Reserve building, right? So there'd already been a fence go around the Capitol building. So when you look at that, like you say, this was to collapse them on purpose.
Yeah.
President Trump and his monumental trade deal with President Xi that never got released because quote unquote COVID happened.
Yeah.
But President Trump put all these tariffs on China.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people, when I was doing my master's degree in business, business schools, all the professors, all tariffs aren't good. Tariff. I'm like, man, like if you didn't do one, what do? We keep getting our cookie jar stolen from China. I mean, at what point do you stand up and go, okay, enough's enough? So, and it turned
he gave
out
it to the
once again,
farmers.
exactly, and it turns out once again that this was a plan. It's all was to collapse the banks on purpose because, as you say, the banks are in it for the interest. They're in it for the money, and too many people. It got so far out of control. Banks here, banks there, I mean, it's really like it was chaos in a different way, and people could not see that. But most people want to stay in that rigmarole because they're afraid of the repercussions of what it would take to unwind this big ball of yarn, right? But thank God we have people once again like Donald Trump, who not only is tough, but he also understands business, and he knew, and the military knew he could do it. The military knew he could handle the economy side and then, be tough on the. So that's what's brilliant about all this is for the fact that even this quote unquote indictment, even though that's just part of the show, when he says if they're going to investigate me, they're going to investigate every president before me. He's setting the precedent on what presidents can be judged by and by rule of law. Then fast forward. There's no president after Donald Trump can come in and say it can't be done. That's why they're exposing the Biden administration. That's how they were going to expose all the rhinos, is the fact that no congressman and no president can ever set foot in D.C. again and say it cannot be done to have a strong economy and defense budget at the same time. No one in our history, traditionally, it's been a Republican who gets in and they raise the defense budget and the economy goes down. Then the Democrat gets in and it flips. Then the economy goes up and the defense budget goes down. No president now can walk behind Donald Trump. Donald Trump schooled the federal corporation. That's what they used him for, was to completely obliterate the deep state, the cabal, the swamp, and show Americans that your money is only as valuable as we let it be, that your defense, hey, all these wars we've started were for money, money, evil money, dirty money. He never started a war. He proved every single facet known to man that you can be president, not start a war, and not have to create a war. And our defense budget is high up here without creating and starting wars, and our economy was booming. So that's what he did to the world.
I think also
the military.
Yeah, the military. Yeah. And I hear a lot of truth. They talk about this central bank digital currency. It was hard to say, central bank digital currency. But I think, who doesn't want that? The private banks, right? So
right.
Let's say you have a central bank that is under the people. You reconstruct that and it's under the people. Is it bad? Will it go analog fully? No, it can't, because so much money is digital already. So I think it's really important now to think, whose errand am I running? And, does this make sense? Yeah, I think it's really important. And it's a lot of information. I understand it's hard, but yeah.
Well, it is a lot of information, but once again, someone had to say enough's enough, and then most people like me, you and I, we know a little bit more than some out there. But once people get acclimated to this change, that's why they had to slowly leak it out. It had to be a controlled operation to slowly leak. And then once people realize it's nothing to fear, it's not scary. Look at you and I, look at all the names I get. You ought to see my inbox, some of them, if I can take it, you can take it, is my attitude. Like, look, if I can, you can. And someone had to draw a line in the sand and say enough's enough in the world. And thank God, once again, we have godly men and women all around the world that are going, okay, we can do this. It's going to be a long haul, but we can do this. And we're 7 years in, is what people need to understand. I'm having to catch people up at this point. But we're 7 years in. We're in cruise control now. It's not bad at all now. It was 3 and 4 years back where it was the most rough. But we're on cruise control now. We're up in the aircraft. We're set back for the ride. Now you're up here. You can take your seatbelt off, right? Throw your seat back. Sleep if you want. Get up and use the restroom if you need. Like we're where the pilot tells you, hey, you're free to roam around the cabin now. Right. So it's nothing to fear at this point. You and I have already lived through the brunt of the brunt. Now we just got to get people to understand what took place, what it's going to look like by what we think it's going to look like. And it's nothing to fear.
When I think about the future and our role in it, I feel like we have a lot more information now than 7 years ago, right?
Oh.
But I think there is so much information left that will come. And that's when we have this very important role to play, all of us that are awake, that understand this, that we have to really help people to comprehend all of this. First they have to catch up with us, and that will take some time. And then they will, and we as well have to digest what is coming. And, Q told us that they won't be able to tell us everything because we wouldn't be able to take it. And those who know, they can sleep. So I think, what we are arguing with amongst each other now is more like we have this controlled opposition, and they are really active, and they are in the skies. They claim that they are pro-Trump or pro-Q, and they are awake, but many of them, they are just paid. They are paid off, and they are not with us. They are here to make us look silly. So what they are doing, they are just bullying with us and making the other people feel that we are crazy. So we get connected with them, and they are acting like this, lunatics. And when we call them out, people are talking about love and peace and the unity. We can't have unity with our enemies. That's impossible. And where should they be? Of course, they have to be very close to the real opposition. So I think we have to step up and really see that our role is maybe coming more and more vital for every day now, because what we have to be ready for what's coming, and that's a lot, I believe. What do you think, Derek?
Well, yeah, same thing. There's a lot of people out there that say the right things, just enough to get people lured in, and it's either for selling something or subscription back, whatever it is. Like they say enough, but then they're not pro-Trump, a lot of them, or pro-military, or anything of that nature. And so that's where we have to get tough in a different way, for the fact that this is a spiritual warfare and it's an information warfare. It's both. And that's the people. A lot of people want differences of opinion. that's good in one way, but it's bad in another, because once again, if the people aren't reading the things that matter and understanding how to discern propaganda and politics from actual what does the law say? So that's why I tell people I'm an average everyday American. Look, I read what the law and order says every day. I don't look at tomorrow. I don't think. All I do is get on today and I go, okay, what optics can I see today? What comms can I see today? Like Donald Trump this morning, wow. I don't know if you saw what he just posted. I was on just a while ago. He literally just posted this. The way the U.S. is going, we will soon be in World War III with no ammunition. That is huge. Like that right there. He just posted this about, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes ago. So people need to read the simplicities of government here, especially if you're in America. Know the simplicities of the government. But I mean, I tell this stat on every show, but roughly 75% of Americans, they can't even name those three branches of government that are under a continuity of government. Just name the three. Just say executive, legislative, and judicial. They can't do that. Wow. So that's where we are. And you got all these people out here that are spewing, like we're saying, you and I are talking about. They get on these shows and they say just enough that those people go, oh, that's what Derek, that's what Cornelia, that's what they talk about. They talk about the Constitution. They talk about these three branches, and they say just enough to lure them in. But then they get them in there, and they don't have a clue where it's going. They don't have a clue what's going on. And then, oh, I'm the bad guy for calling it out in a different way. I don't ever put anybody's name in my mouth. I just say, ladies and gentlemen, in order for you to discern, right? I'm like, I tell people though, in order for you to discern what's going on, you have to read these laws and orders too. You can't just rely on me to sit here and tell you. Now, you might be an audio listener, and that's cool, but you have to, at some point, watch the video over and over and over until you can repeat this and go to your neighbor and say, hey, do you know what's going on? Check this out. Or if you can't repeat it like me, then say, you got to watch this guy. But people can't just sit in their confinement of their house and watch you and I and never go tell anybody. Because the quicker they tell everybody, and the quicker everybody knows what's going on and hears it from the right mouth saying, hey, it don't matter what you look like, what your background is. It don't matter what your nationality is, what religion you are. Those are still your preferences. In order to have these things, you're gonna have a strong border. You need identification. You need certain things to have that life, to have a true, free life. The Constitution protects everybody. The Constitution don't read it. Oh, it don't say, oh, you can't be this and you can't be. It don't read like that, you know. But you have to have people that think like us in order to have more of a free life. Because the life we were living, you're only as free as the surroundings allow you to be. Well, we weren't free at all. We were confined. We're controlled by the dollar, the currency that we just talked about. You're controlled by ideologies out there of these. And I've heard more people in the U.S. in my short 40 years, I've heard people say, oh, well, that's out of my pay grade. That's what Congress gets paid to do. No, they work for you. It ain't the other way around. And so people need to understand how to discern what you're listening to. The only way to discern what you're listening from one speaker to the next are knowing the laws and the orders and what they say and knowing what's going on right now by law and order. And that's how you discern it.
Yeah, but also, I mean, all these fear mongers, they're talking about that everybody that took the jab, they will die and so on. But if they keep pushing that narrative, I mean, how can we bring people on board? Because they have to understand what system, I mean, this deep state system that we were under, how we have been fooled all up, our lives. Yeah. So how can we get them on board if we have these lunatics, telling people that they're going to die in 2 years?
Yeah, I get upset with the same thing because they say, oh, I've been awake my whole life. No, you haven't. No, you haven't. if you've been awake your whole life, then I wouldn't be in my position. I wouldn't have been able to tell all these laws and orders in a blueprint. You wouldn't be in your position. No, you're not. And that's the people who are, they're trying to, and what they do is they use the same fear tactics that the rhinos and the regime use. They use the same fear tactics.
Mainstream media is the same. They're just scaring people.
They use health. Health is our, you and I are living, we're breathing, we're breathing here, right? That's our health. Health is important to us because that's how we live. So that's the worst fear tactic you'd use on someone is the health. Oh, you're going to die in 2 years because you did this. And if there's someone who's like, well, what do I do? What do I do? Well, come over here and listen to me, but pay for this subscription first. Oh, man.
Yeah.
And you're right. Yeah. You're correct. But everybody's been under a matrix. Everybody has been asleep. And we all had to wake up in our own entities and go, wait, whoa. Because I knew the Constitution my whole life. I knew about our foundation, our military foundation, our military war, our military. But I didn't have all the pieces until Donald Trump laid all the pieces out.
Exactly.
Well, the last pieces were, right? I mean, you couldn't have 2021 without 2020. You couldn't have 2020 without 2017. So those laws and the orders had to be laid out. People say, how did you figure all this out? I'm like, because it was pieced out piece by piece. But you couldn't have this one without this one. But, it didn't happen that long ago. I mean, these laws that Donald Trump put in place was just 7 years ago moving forward. So it's like, when people say that, I've been awake my whole life. No, you haven't. You haven't been awake your whole life. And you couldn't. I've had podcasters say, I've been knowing about these laws and orders for years. And they're meaning 15 and 10. I'm like, no, these laws and orders weren't put out until just 7 years and up. No, you haven't. No, you don't. Anyway. See, it's people who are worried. It's people who are worried about their fan base versus caring about people. Right. It's huge difference.
Speaking the truth, right? And also, I mean, people have so much opinions about Donald Trump, but I mean, you can't say that his tactic was really efficient. I mean, he woke up, the whole world. So you can say, oh, he should have been a little bit more like that. He shouldn't have said it. You don't know that. This was efficient. I mean, this worked. This worked, His tactic works. So just shut up,
I mean, but what's funny is people in everyday life, they want people in their circles just to be real with them, right? Republicans over here, they'll get their tie on and and it's scripted, right? It's just so scripted. And you hear them speak, you're like, man, just loosen your collar, sit back, just talk like a real person. That's what Donald Trump does. Yeah. But he can do it with a tie, right? So it's like, hey, and that's what people need to understand about him. I've been around him twice, and it's like he's so witty. He's calculated. He's concise and precise. He don't just talk. He don't just make small talk. But the point is, it's like he's real. He'll just say whatever, right? Now, I'm not going to say stuff he told me because I'm keeping some of it.
I want to know what he's told you.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, I'm just saying I won't say some of the things just because he was being real. But, but he's real. He's witty. It's like, we won Alabama by 47 points but then he's like, how in the hell do we lose Georgia by 3? Right. So it's just like real talk. Like he don't say, oh, we won Alabama by 47 and we lost Georgia by 3. That's how Republicans talk, right? He's just like, how in the hell did we lose Georgia by 3? He's just real funny like that. I mean, in a different way. And he's just real. And that's what people want in their everyday life. They want people to be real with them. Well, he's just real, and I think if people would quit, it's no different than, people want to judge people based off their lifestyle, right? Oh, Donald Trump, he slept with so and so and so. How many people have you slept with? Oh, crickets, right? Like, there's how you get real quick. It's like, well, okay, Mr. Hey, here's a stone. Remember what the Bible says? Those without sin and cast the first stone. Here's your stone. Start throwing it, right? So no one ever wants to they want realness around them. But when you get real with them, you say, well, why don't you like Donald Trump? Oh, because he does this. Have you ever done that? You get crickets, right? Say, oh, I just hit you where it hurts on it. So everybody, no one should judge anybody based off of morals. You live your life based off the life you feel like you're morally obligated with your morals, right? Now, we have things that we've established in the world as what we think is, that is a crime, right? But other than that, like, whoever comes to your house, I'm not looking at the neighbors going, oh, that's the third vehicle in 2 days it's been in that house. Wonder what they're doing. Mind your own business, right? So, and people in America don't do that. They're so drama filled, and they're all about the neighbor, but they don't get in front of the mirror and go, I had 3 vehicles in my drive this week too. Oh no, they don't do that. They worry about the neighbor, and they talk. That's what we got to get fixed too in this nation and the world. But it's mainly a lot of Americans, because I've heard it more than anything. And Donald Trump, he's hated by people that don't even know why they hate him. They're just told to hate.
Yeah. And then they were told to support Ukraine, and then they were told. But I mean, this with Ukraine, I think is really, really good. What Trump said that about the ammunition. I mean, since we are sending everything from the whole world to Ukraine, that's, we're not going to have wars. We're going to have peace, right? So why do you need all these weapons? It's perfect, that we send them to Ukraine so the Russia can destroy them. And that is what's happening, So I think that's great. And that's also, the plan to have peace throughout the world.
And that's, that's like I tell Americans. Most Americans are dime store politicians. They want to pick it up today and read one article and think they know everything about that topic off of that one article just today, and then put it down 3 days later, 4 days later, a week later, pick another article up. Don't work like that. The United States of America, Obama administration funded those labs in Ukraine. And that's why Donald Trump got Putin to do what he did when he handed him that soccer ball, 2018. The ball's in your court, sir. You tell me what you want. Well, that's your motherland. That's part of your homeland. How about you go in there and destroy those U.S. funded labs, right? So it's all under oath. There's another thing. There's Americans. They don't pay attention to what's going on. March the 8th, 2022, Victoria Nuland. The same Victoria Nuland who worked for the Obama administration, who secured $1 billion in defense for Ukraine in 2014. The same Victoria Nuland who said F the EU, right? They called her saying the F word, the F bomb as we call it. Yeah. All right. Same Victoria Nuland. Now she's under secretary for Biden. It's funny how all these people just recycled over here to the Biden administration. Yeah, Victoria Nuland, March 8th. Right? Right, it's like March 8th, 2022, Marco Rubio, senator, under oath. Are there biolabs in Ukraine? And all throughout 2021, the Biden administration, there aren't any biolabs in Ukraine. There's no biolab. All throughout 2021, now Victoria Nuland, the same undersecretary, in March 8th, 2022, now all of a sudden, yes, there are, but we're afraid the Russians are going to get them. Like, let's blame the Russians, right? Well, it shows people. Donald Trump, the soccer ball, 2018, the same year that Ukraine, the same year the Ukraine broke a CIS treaty with Russia, the same year, Russia, here's Putin handing Trump the soccer ball. The ball's in your court, sir. What would you like? Right? Well, who didn't play in the FIFA World Cup? Russia. What year did Russia go into Ukraine? 2022. You know, people don't understand football in your world, the soccer, it's not here as much. It's gaining popularity in the US, but the original football, not our kind of football, but the soccer ball. That's a big deal for Russia not to play in the FIFA World Cup. They missed that because of what's going on. And those pieces show everybody what's happening. And I have the documents. I have the original. I've heard they were wiped as well, but I have them in my documents. I have them saved on my phone. All the funding of the bio labs in Ukraine, I have those in my documents. I have the pictures of that. Now, some people out there, you know how they are in today's age. Oh, you could have photoshopped that. I'm like, yeah, because I can clearly speak Ukrainian, as you can tell. You know. So,
yeah.
Anyway.
And then he took the football and he gave it to his son Baron. And the Baron is really good with computers, right? So that's that's what we think. That it was something in it.
Well, the mainstream media reported that too, that there were some codes in that soccer ball, right?
It could have been Hillary Clinton's emails. I don't know. That is just a speculation. But could you please, I also got a question about this golden flag. Could you tell us a little bit more? Because then it was gone. You know, you wrote a post about that.
Well, yeah, so
golden,
Well, the gold fringe flag is basically stood for Admiralty Courts, which is admiral. Admiral is a naval term. Mm-hmm. The law of water is maritime law. So, you know, it's an Admiralty Court flag. When Donald Trump, in January 2021, Donald Trump took that flag, all those flags, you normally see them in a courtroom, and he had 17 of them behind it, and they were outside, right? So that was a big significance to have those gold fringe flags outside. And, you know, a lot of it, it's not necessarily speculation per se, but it's just whenever the Queen died, you had Millie and Lloyd Austin, front and center, press conference, everywhere throughout January 2021. Everywhere Nancy Pelosi has been, Schiff, Schumer, all these different politicians, it don't matter if they were playing the game Twister. That gold fringe flag has been in every angle, every shot for a reason. All right. So the other thing you got to pair with that real quick is the executive order that President Trump put into place for the POW flag to fly under the American flag. Prisoner of war means captured, right? So that flag and then that signature, as I call it, it's like a signature, is saying that we've got you. We captured that moment. We captured that. There was an event that took place. We got it. So when the Queen died, Millie and Austin, the flags didn't have fringes behind them. Okay. All right. So then throughout other things, so like just the other night when President Trump came back from New York, he had his speech at Mar-a-Lago. When he was walking out, there were gold fringe flags as he was walking out, front and center. But when he walked on the stage, every flag on that stage did not have a fringe on it. So to me, that was a transition, right? You look at that as a transition. Oh, gold fringe, no gold fringe, right? So it was a transition. Now, you know, what is that going to lead to? Well, I mean, he's been amping his proclamations up about martial law, the emergency communications, all throughout 2021, 2022 on his speeches. Bottom line showed how you buy an emergency radio. It was showing Americans about the emergency radio. If you don't have one, here's how you purchase one. So every time you see a gold fringe flag behind what I call the cabal or the deep state, it's every angle. It don't matter what side that flag is. It's everywhere. All right, so it's more of that versus like, is it the most important thing out there? No, but it's a symbol, and it's showing you. Now people ask me all the time, do you think, will the flag lose its fringe? No, I don't think it'll lose its fringe as far as that goes. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that shows that the fringe is just a decorative, piece that was added to the flag, but history shows it's an admiralty law symbol. Now, I'm not the most legal expert out there in the world, in the sense of, people call me a legal expert. I'm like, look, I'm someone who knows what's going on by military law and order. I'm not an attorney, but we know that we were based off. There's a Black's Law book based off common law before the Organic Act of 1871, which put us back under the crown. That's when the Bartizan was created in the 1870s over here. So what are the odds of that? There's another one of those quote unquote coincidences where the U.S. went back. Ulysses S. Grant, President Grant, signed us back under the British crown, right, in the Organic Act of 1871. And then in the 1870s, the bar was established in the U.S. The bar, British Accreditation Registry, right? Not a good thing. So will they just say, hey, the gold fringe flag was admiralty, maritime law, and we've been under this maritime law system. We're really supposed to be under common law, Black's law, and go back to our original foundation? Or was it always set on this? Was it always set on this there's a lot of questions out there, but the basic core principle of that flag is it's a fact that, every time something has happened, something significant has happened, there's no fringes around it, which means to me, mission accomplished, mission complete, right? So it goes back to, like, there's certain symbols, as we know, in the world that became a world symbol and people made it bad. Was the original symbol bad? Probably not, but people made it bad. There's a lot of there's organizations out there. The organization was established for a good reason, but then people made it bad. Does it mean the organization is bad itself? No, it means the people who made it bad. But we'll see,
One last topic is actually Pennsylvania, the keystone. And there has been rumors that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court is the highest court in the land. And, Kim Clement, he had a prophecy where he was prophesying about the highest court in the land, and people shouted the Supreme Court, and he was like, and he kept saying the highest court in the land. So he wasn't really satisfied with that, response. So, and they say that all of Trump's, all of his legal stuff is going on in Pennsylvania. And let's say Washington, D.C. is a foreign entity. Then maybe Pennsylvania, and the first White House was also in Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania was part of New Sweden. So I found this really interesting. Have you digged on this?
Yes, and I'm going to pull up something real quick that I was reading last night that was very important to this message. But first off, Philadelphia, you talk about, I was just joking with my manager last night about the Liberty Bell, but I was making a joke about the Liberty Bell in a different way. But so many people don't realize, like even the basketball team in Philadelphia, the Philadelphia 76ers, right, based off of 1776. Now, people don't realize that our history actually started in Philadelphia, the first Continental Congress. You know, so many people don't realize that.
The Constitution was signed there.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And so, you know, so many people don't realize it wasn't D.C., it was Philadelphia, which is also part of, you know, Rocky, right? You know, our Rocky movies, he runs up the steps, you know, does this famous, you know, a lot of people, you know, that it wasn't just about a movie and a boxer, right? You know, Philadelphia has all of our nation's history right there. But so I talk about this a lot because after the November the 3rd, 2020 election, there's a window where electors have to put in, and it last, see, 2020 was December the 14th, the last I believe it was December the 14th, when there had to be an appeal process between those dates in order to do so. Well, Donald Trump, what shows run a continuity government, what shows run a military operation, the Supreme Court is not going to take on certain things because they had to expose the rhinos in a certain way on this election, these election frauds, right? And these election, you know, scandals. So Donald Trump, that was one of, so the state of Pennsylvania, there's a docket out there. Now the Supreme Court rejected it. However, Pennsylvania was the one state that they had 800,000 more votes than they had registered voters. I mean, it was a big number, right?
It was dogs and dead people,
It was almost double the amount. So that's why Pennsylvania is the key. Now, talking about the aircrafts I watch aircrafts all over Harrisburg, PA. That is where their capital is. So, throughout in 2021 and 2022, the Doomsday plane flew to Harrisburg a lot. The Doomsday plane is the presidential aircraft that keeps the president safe during nuclear catastrophic event. Well, that aircraft, I have that in documents going to Harrisburg from Florida up to Nebraska, where it stays based, and then over to Harrisburg and back, doing the triangle. All right, so there's that. I do have those in documents. That's really cool. And then, so this is kind of cool. Let me see if it got pulled up here. So page 10. So if you go to the executive branch, all right, reconstitution concept of that continuity of operations, like I said, January 2021 alone was titled the reconstitution of the executive branch. All right. Now watch this. You go to page 10 and it says, it's so awesome. Executive branch reconstitution. Executive branch reconstitution is the collective reconstitution of the EOP and the executive departments and agencies working in collaboration with the EBR cell. So I'll have to go back and define all those. But if reconstitution is not possible in the Washington, D.C. area, Congress, in accordance with its enumerated powers, will work with the states to establish a new seat of government. Once the new seat of government is identified, the construction and or appropriate facilities to house executive departments, agencies begin. The central role of the executive departments and agencies and the key important roles of the EBR cell members organizations are reflected in Exhibit 4. So when you look at Exhibit 4, it just shows you this, a flow chart of how, the reconstitution of the executive branch will look like. But the key part of that is, once again, if it can't be established in DC, it will be identified somewhere else. Now, a lot of people think that's Texas. When Roosevelt left DC, Roosevelt went to Texas. However, there's a lot of movement in PA. There's a lot of action in Harrisburg, PA. I watch it every day on the aircrafts. Matter of fact, we had a helicopter this was just yesterday, we had a helicopter from Australia in Pennsylvania flying around. right? So how did that helicopter get from Australia to Pennsylvania? It didn't fly here; it was brought here. So there's a lot of movement in PA, and it was the key. It's probably the key battleground state because of that reason. And like you say, where did our history actually begin? So, which Supreme Court is the Supreme Court? Right? It's just a building, as we know. So, we make that building what we make it, right? Well, the original, where the Constitution was signed, where the first Continental Congress was in Philadelphia. So,
and that's where Trump have all his legal trials. And
I mean, there's docs out there that show that. I mean, it shows. What was funny though is he actually filed December 7th, 2020. He filed. He used the state of Texas. It's Trump in the state of Texas versus Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Georgia. So it's going to be a matter of how that plays out. I don't know. Texas is vital over here because of their economy. They're such a big state, and because of what they do for the GDP. If they ever seceded from the Union, it'd be devastating to the rest of the U.S. So I think he's using it for that reason. But Pennsylvania, holds a lot of history, holds a lot of weight, and then once again, they showed they had, like I said, they had almost double the amount of votes than they do voters registered. So, I mean, it's funny in one way. It's not in another. It's bad that we had to get to this point because they did all this on purpose. But it's a key state. It really is.
In Sweden, we have no voter ID. We have no signature, and it's all for for our our interest. It's for the best of the people. To keep our. We want to keep anonymous. So it's a joke, and I think that is what Trump is trying to show us, that this is a joke. I mean, democracy. I mean, the U.S. is a republic. It's not even a democracy. I mean, this is ridiculous. How can you have a democracy when you have people that are fooled? We don't get the intel. We don't understand what's going on. And then we get to decide. I mean, it's just a joke. So I think it's really important that this has to play out. And I understand that some people are really tired of, hearing this about the election. But this is like the foundation of what we have, believed that the system was, that the people, could decide. We have never had a choice. We have never decided anything. So that's about that.
Well, what you do is you just tell Americans, like, are you better off? Were you better off before Donald Trump, or are you better off after Donald Trump? Which one is it? Because it's very clear when Donald Trump was in, of all presidents, and I've lived under quite a few myself, you're only as free as your surroundings allow you to be, and then your dollar is only as valuable as they wanted it to be, or invaluable. And in my lifetime, it was always it just went up, down, up, down. And that's not how that's not what checks and balances mean from the true definition of our founders. That's not how it is. What happened, like I tell people, that what everybody thought was checks and balances only kept the politicians rich. And as long as they were in office, they're fine, right? Yeah. And no one voted them out. So, look at Joe Biden. He was a senator for 36, 38 years. I mean, think of that, 107.
He came in with empty pockets, and then yeah.
And senators, right? They get paid $170,000 a year, but Joe Biden's worth $347 million. Man,
Does
You know,
he give it away like Trump did?
yeah. Who's his financial advisor,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Hunter. Where's Hunter?
Yeah, dang, Hunter. You know, Hunter missed his opportunity to open his own firm up, right? So it's all right in front of
Yeah.
everybody. It really is. It's right in front of everybody. As you said earlier, and I say it on every show, it's a lot of information, sure, but it can be dissected when you have the tools to dissect it, and that's law and order.
Yeah. Yeah, and also, I mean, to point in the right direction, and that's why, you know, we are a network here, and we have actually movies. It's called deepstate.se, and it's Free People's Movement, and that is just short videos, maybe 10-15 minutes about different subject, and that's really good. Because we have a lot of information since we have the core of the deep state. If the deep state is like an unofficial state or a government, or if you call it a network of companies that are working together in order to enrich themselves, that the head of that is actually in Sweden, and that is this Wallenberg family. They have this network, and they are the system with the internet, the Bank of International Settlements, the telecom infrastructure, the power grid is ABB. Everything is Wallenberg, right? So they are like the umbrella, and then they have all these organizations. So that's why we want to come on to more shows and talk about this family, and not the family itself, but how they have leveraged. They have found things that all, you know, the whole world needs: telecom infrastructure, for example, internet, you know, banks, you know, and they have the keys to that, and they have used that. They have actually been filed that they have bribed ISIS for 17 years, and they have cost hundreds of American soldiers their lives, and they have admitted that. So this is really, I mean, they have been in the shadows for too long, and now it's time. But I have been so censored. So I think maybe it wasn't time before. Actually, TikTok. I'm on TikTok now, and they took down one video, and that was the one about Wallenberg. So this is still maybe a little bit too early, I don't know, but it's really important for people to do their own research. Go to ericssonreport.com and deepstate.se, and please support Derek's work, and I'm happy if you support my work. And I think we should talk again, Derek. Do you have some closing things to say to our audiences?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you can find all my work at the documents.info, and you can find all my social links there. But you know, you have to, you know, just take a deep breath. Like I tell people, just relax, don't panic. You know, we're living, we're breathing. Time only moves forward, and as long as we're living and breathing, you know, God has a plan. God is the one who's in control of this. The sovereign God. So, you know, God the Almighty, whatever you want to call him. But it's like you have to be willing to put in the time and the energy to understand what's going on. And if you want to stay in the matrix, well, then you can turn on the TV, stay in the matrix. You can, but there's a way to escape it. And that's looking at wherever you live. Like if you're in the United States of America, look at laws and orders of what's happening right now. You got to look at what's in place right now. And you got to be able to go, okay. Like, for instance, I tell people all the time, if you don't believe me, then try to prove me wrong. That's not about me being right or wrong. But if that's what motivates you to go read
get a life.
Right. This is what motivates you. Then go read these documents, right? They're all .gov and .mil sites. It's nothing that I wrote personally. I didn't write these laws and it passed them. I'm just simply interpreting them because they are our laws and orders. They are for us to know. They're for us to know them like the back of our eyelids. So that's what I do is encourage people to, hey, look, if you want to understand what's going on, then you got to be able to discern how to separate propaganda and politics from actual law and order. And that's what I've done. So that'd be my closing.
Yeah, and you have a constitution, right? We don't have any of that. I mean, we don't have any politician. We don't have anyone, speaking the truth. The only thing that we have is all these propaganda channels, all these lies, and people. They don't want to tell the truth, and nobody's telling the truth. So I believe actually that Sweden and maybe other countries as well are under the U.S. Constitution. I believe so. So I believe that this is a wartime president, and I believe that he is actually, when he took control over their system, with, the Vatican, City of London, and Washington, D.C., when he took control over that in 2017, he actually became the president of the world. And what you have is all these executive orders, and they are applicable. They are applying all over the world. This is a global.
Yep.
That's what I believe. So we are really linked together. I mean, really, we have the same president, same commander in chief. I believe so.
We definitely do.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you so much, Derek. I hope you will come back and we can speak a little bit more about the future and how we think that this will play out. And that will just be our opinions. But would you like to do that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll definitely come back for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Take care now. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me.
God bless you.
God bless you too. Thank you.